Good evening, everybody. I'm Eric Renier of TheWrit.ca, and I'm joined tonight by Philippe J. Fournier of 338canada.com. Just to make sure, I see there's already a couple people in the chat. If you can just let me know for certain that you are hearing me, you are seeing us. Philippe, how are you doing tonight?
Very well, Eric. It's really great to speak with you again.
So I think that for people who are just tuning in, wondering what is this by-election all about, I did see some questions about it. I do think that on the right of the screen, you should be able to see there's a map there of Marie-Victorin. This is it's the riding just in the red. And what we're looking at is Longueuil. So this is, if you just look at to the left, that is the island of Montreal. So we're talking about a riding that is just in Longueuil, in the suburbs on the South Shore. Very francophone riding, but Philippe, what can you say about Marie-Victorin?
I would say outside Montreal and Quebec City, it's probably the most urban riding in Quebec. It's connected to the metro system. There are many students there. It's the I don't want to say the poorest district of the 450, but it used to be very working class. As I said, many students younger than the Quebec's average. Of course, it has changed as Quebec has changed demographically in the last decade or so, and it's historically a PQ stronghold. 11 straight victories for the Parti québécois. And tonight it's getting tested. So this should be very interesting for them.
Yeah, this seat, with the exception of a by-election in 1980, I have a note here, what was it, 84, 85?
84. Yeah.
84. The PQ's always won this. The Liberals won it that one time. This was actually at one point, a long time ago, part of this riding was part of the riding that René Lévesque represented.
That's right.
He didn't represent Marie-Victorin, but it's a riding with just a very long PQ history. And they only captured just under 31% of the vote in 2018, which was their worst ever result. They almost lost to the CQ. That rose to about 28%. That was their best result. The ADQ once matched that almost in 2007. So why we're paying attention to this one is that this is sort of not a bellwether, but it is going to be a test for the PQ, because if they can't hold on to it, it raises a question of, outside of some seats in the Gaspé, that area, where can the PQ hold seats? And if the CEQ can win it, well, that's a bit of good news before an election call that's going to be, when's the election officially starting? In 5 months?
Less than 5 months? August 25.
Yeah. All right. So there you go. It is kind of strange that we're having a by-election this soon. Or do we already have some results? I'll switch over to the...
Well, we have one box. 22 votes for the CAQ, 7 for the PQ. But then again, I'm not going to do that all night. I hate when they do that in election night. We have one box to report. We'll wait, but it just appeared on my screen. So
okay, mine is waiting to refresh in 30 seconds. Maybe I'll let that happen just to see.
Maybe it's the speed of light. I'm right here. I mean, it's I'm in Montreal, but just vis-a-vis the St. Lawrence River, it's right there. So
yeah.
But as you were saying, Eric, it's not a bellwether, but it's one of the many canaries in a coal mine for the Parti québécois. Because if they can't hold on to Marie-Victorin, they were. Parti québécois was wiped out of Quebec City, of the Capitale Nationale region in 2018 when they lost Tachereau. And their last Montreal or Greater Montreal seat was Marie-Victorin. Of course, Catherine Fournier held it. She left to become mayor of Longueuil. But if they lose this, they don't have any seats in the Eastern Townships and the Outaouais region and Mauricie. I mean, they could be down to perhaps Joliette if Véronique stays, and she hasn't announced that she would stay, and then way down Bas-Saint-Laurent and Côte-Nord. And so it would be a disaster for the Parti québécois to lose this tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so yeah, you're right. We do have our first results, and the CQ has 76%. So, Philippe, I guess the CQ is going to run the table here. I'm going to, I'm having a bit of issues with the placement of the window, so bear with me a little bit. I'm trying to get it so it's nice.
Oh, it was wow, one box. Nice it was one box, and the Liberals didn't have a single vote. So
they've got this website's actually pretty good, I gotta say. All right, I think I might have it so that it's okay. I'll just wait a second to make sure. It was complicated because Elections Quebec didn't have it already as it was going to show up. So wait, here, I'm still playing around with this. Oh, this isn't working as well as I hoped.
But
All
I'll
right.
speak. I'll speak while you do this. So yeah, Marie-Victorin. We are 6 months away, less than 6 months away from the general election. The Parti québécois is polling in single digits. It had 17% of the vote in the last election. So if we take your proportional model that you used to have, you almost cut in half. Of course, that's not the way it works, but you almost cut in half the PQ support everywhere. With such crude calculations, they would have one seat left, and that would be Matane Matapédia of former interim leader Pascal Bérubé. And another thing that we'll mention at some point tonight, because I'm doing TV later tonight, so this is a good practice for me.
Yes.
I'm practicing my English with you, my friend.
Get all your good words out now.
But Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, the PQ leader, who's unelected, announced in January that it was running in Bourget. So this is just the eastern half of Montreal, and the Parti québécois used to win Bourget comfortably, but they lost it last time, and he thinks somehow that demographically the PQ has gone up in Montreal, which is really hasn't. And so if they can't hold on to Marie-Victorin, I don't see how Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon can win in Bourget. It just doesn't make sense. And we have to add also that the Parti québécois, they have Pierre Nantel. Pierre Nantel is a known local figure. He was an MP that was elected first during the Orange Wave with Jack Layton. He was with the NDP, but it was not a secret that he was a sovereigntist.
Well, it seemed to be to Elizabeth May when he went over to the Greens, if you remember that.
Yeah. He figured, well, the environment is important. I'll just step on my pride a little bit. But then he's coming home to the PQ. He's very well known locally because he was a Longueuil MP. If the Parti québécois can't win with this guy in a riding they won 11 times in a row, it will look terribly bad. I don't want to go into hyperbole, but it really is what we're looking at tonight. If the CAQ wins, it's more of a story that the PQ lost.
Yeah. And, Pierre Nantel, I was looking at the record of the elections in this riding. And in 1984, there was a person named Pierre Nantel who ran for the PQ. I looked it up. I found a McLean's article, and it said he was a councillor, but he was a businessman. And I don't think Pierre Nantel would have been old enough to run for the PQ in 84. And I feel we would have heard about it. So,
oh, yeah, absolutely. No.
I don't know if that's his father or it's just a weird coincidence that there was two Pierre Nantels who've run in this riding for the PQ.
It's like Smith over here.
Yes.
I mean, it's the
yes.
It's
Nantel,
an uncommon name.
Yeah, we should probably, so the CAQ, Shirley Dorismond, she is a nurse that is in that area. She was part of the union, or I can't exactly what organization it was. But
yes, it's the Association of Health Workers.
Yes, so there you go. She was involved with that. At one point, she was actually kind of critical of the CAQ government and its approach during the pandemic, but they're all happy now. And of course, as you said, Pierre Nantel was the NDP MP. The other candidates worth mentioning, there is Shophika Vaithyanathasarma, who ran for the Bloc Québécois in...
Got it on first try.
I practiced. I wanted to make sure I got it right. But yes, she ran for the Bloc Québécois in Rosemont, la Petite Patrie, which is on the island of Montreal. Now she's running for Quebec solidaire. There was Émilie Nollet, who is a business person who's running for the Liberals, and then Anne Casabonne, who's running for the Conservatives. I wasn't that familiar with her. How well known is she in Quebec?
Well, for those who follow the Quebec culture and the Quebec TV shows, basically les téléromans, I mean, she's part of a small circle of actresses that have done the main roles in Quebec shows, primetime shows. So she is not a superstar, but she is well known, well respected. And it was a surprise to many when she joined the Conservatives, although it became less and less of a surprise because she called vaccines, they inject you shit. If I can translate what she said from French to English, I wasn't swearing, I was quoting. So she became, not to say that she became all the way anti-vaccine, but she was very critical of vaccine in the vaccination campaign that was going on in Quebec. And so she found a home with Éric Duhem to go against the sanitary measures that were imposed on Quebecers.
We should also mention Martine Ouellet, who is running a new party called Climat Québec. And someone made the point which I thought was a very funny thing, was on Infoman, that if you look up Climat Québec on Google, you'll come up with the weather. You don't end up with her party website. She is the former PQMNA. She had run for the leadership of the PQ, I think twice, maybe three times, twice.
That's
okay.
Right.
And she won the leadership of the Bloc Québécois. And that did not go very well when 7 out of 10 MPs left the party because of her leadership. And then she actually went to a leadership review, and I think she only got in the 30s in terms of her support.
She had won the Bloc Québécois leadership by acclamation. Nobody showed up, basically.
Like Blanchet, too.
Like Blanchet, although Blanchet, they were really happy to see him there. It was not the case with Martine Ouellet. She can be a very, what's the word I'm looking for? She can be very curt with people. And
yes,
not just
her
the
style
media,
was not appreciated.
Yes, her style was not appreciated. She's very passionate, of course, and she will be splitting the Green vote tonight because there's still a Green Party running in Marie-Victorin. So.
And we should mention the Green Party is running the leader, Alex Tyrrell.
They always do.
So there's a lot of candidates. There's 12 candidates running.
Yeah.
And we just went through a list of, what was it, six or seven that are worth at least knowing and seeing how well they do on this election night. So that's why we wanted to focus on this, because it just seems like an interesting by-election that's taking place just ahead of a general election in October. And there's all these small little intriguing storylines. And what I'm looking at right now, we're still at just the amount of votes that I mentioned before. Only 29 votes have been counted. So we're still really early on. But anyway, I see some of you are in the chats. By the way, if you want to subscribe to this YouTube channel, please do that. I would really appreciate it. You can just click on it. It's free. You'll get notified when I have new videos, that kind of thing. So just do that if you don't mind. But anyway, I am watching the chat, and hello to all of you. And if you do have any questions, we can try to get to them. If you're talking amongst yourselves as well, that's fine. But I will try to keep an eye on the questions as well if we need things to talk about. One of the things, we're talking about Anne Casabonne, the Conservatives. Now, for people who aren't familiar with Quebec politics, the Quebec Conservatives aren't affiliated with the federal Conservatives. Before the last couple of months, they were really just a party that would get 1% of the vote, 2% if it was lucky. But now, in some of the polls, they're running second.
They're running second or third in a popular vote. Of course, we have to remember that it's a new party, so they probably don't have a great get out the vote machine on the ground, but still Éric Duhem, a very popular radio host, especially in the Quebec City area, known as a libertarian right wing, one of those radio jocks that likes to sometimes say some things he doesn't necessarily mean just to provoke and to get a reaction. Very on the populist wing, basically of the right side of the spectrum, and he's getting increasing support. I mean, he's not dangerous to the CAQ necessarily, because CAQ is still polling at around 40%. But the Conservatives could be strong in Quebec City, the South Shore of Quebec City. So this is the former ADQ, the former libertarian area of Quebec City, and where basically federally where you have conservative strongholds. And he could, right now, in my projections, he could win as much as 5 seats. It's unlikely that he wins that much if the election was held today, but the election is not held today. It's in 6 months, and he's been growing and growing his support. And he has now 57,000 members, which is more than the Parti québécois, more than the Liberals, more than Québec solidaire.
Wow.
So it is an impressive, very rapidly growing movement.
Both Philippe and I speak French. Philippe speaks it better than I do. But we did there are some questions in French, and we can talk a little bit in French as well. I know that it seems like most of the audience is English, but there was a question here. Le PQ est-il le seul à avoir son nom officiel en français et en anglais auprès d'Élection Québec? Et j'ai juste vérifié, et c'est juste les libéraux et le Parti vert.
Oui, c'est pas vraiment surprenant, mais en effet, le nom bilingue est là depuis très longtemps. Et je suis pas mal sûr que si un nouveau parti libéral commençait aujourd'hui, le nom serait seulement en français, mais de l'enlever at this point, it would be damageable for the Liberals, so they can't. Mais c'est vrai, en effet.
Yeah. So the question was whether the Liberal Party was the only one that had an English and French name officially with Elections Quebec, and the Greens also do. You could argue, I suppose, that the Parti québécois is already bilingual enough. I don't think they want to be the Quebecer Party.
But I've never heard, even in English Canadian media, call it the Québécois Party. It's
always the Parti québécois. Yeah, it's always the PQ. Yeah, that's true.
Same thing for Québec solidaire. Do we say Québec's?
I always hear it as Québec solidaire.
Of course. Yeah.
But one of the big differences in English, and this is something I got drilled into me at my CBC days, was that you don't say the CAQ because it sounds vulgar. You say the CAQ. In French, you say la CAQ, but in English, you say the CAQ.
Yeah, that's a good call.
So Philippe, when you go on CTV later, CAQ.
I think that's what I've been doing, but I might have slipped a few CAQ this and CAQ that and something. Right? Yeah. Oh well.
So as you can see, we're still talking about this first box that's been open. It's going to take a little while for the first votes to come in, because Elections Quebec originally said they would expect the first results between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. So we're already at 8:15. We've got one poll that was opened. It was probably a special poll or something like that. Got counted pretty quick. But I'll keep an eye on the numbers and go through the whole table back and forth on the screen. And you guys let me know if you can see it correctly and all that kind of stuff. There was a question here. Does this election have the potential to make anyone resign? I don't think so. It's too close to an election.
That's well, the answer is no, but it's still an interesting question. If the Liberals don't get to double digits, which is entirely possible, in any normal year, with this kind of polling, the Quebec Liberals would fire the leader and they would go with somebody else. But we have to remember that Dominique Anglade won the Quebec leadership, the Quebec Liberal leadership, by acclamation. Nobody showed up, and so
there was someone running against her for a while.
For a while, until he realized, I don't want to do this. I have a life. I'm happy. Why would I do this? So
she had a seat though at the time, whereas the other guy didn't.
And he's from Drummondville, and the Liberals are not winning Drummondville in the next decade. So
I wonder if they have. I mean, I shouldn't say this because I haven't looked it up, but I can't imagine that the Liberals were very successful in Drummondville for a while.
It's early Charest years, perhaps, but no, it's been a while. Yeah.
Oh, we got our next votes. Okay, so let's just take a look. What do we got counted? Three polling boxes have been counted. So we're up to 50% for Shirley Dorismond. We're at 22% for Pierre Nantel, 11% for Anne Casabonne, 8% for Shophika Vaithyanathasarma.
Shophika. She is such a beautiful first name.
Yeah. I apologize. I did try to get it correctly before. Émilie Nollet is at 6%. Martine Ouellet is at a big 2%, and everybody else is below 1. Again, we don't. This is only 3 boxes that have opened, right? So we don't know where they are. Yeah. Parts of the riding, particularly the parts of the riding that are closer, that are further away from the St. Lawrence, from the island, they're a bit more CAQ friendly. They're a bit more, teal. Let's say.
Well, bigger houses, more suburbanites use their car to go downtown and swear there's traffic, basically. So, big stereotypes here, So.
Yeah. So we got a question.
It's early, but it still doesn't look good. I mean,
question: Liberal Party, it's Anglophone. Well, it is the party that gets the most support among Anglophones. Although we've seen in the polls that it's gone down quite a bit.
It's gone down quite a bit, yes.
But among Francophones, the PLQ has gotten between 8 and 11% in the last couple of polls.
That's right.
Among Anglophones, they normally, we did see a poll that had them just below 50%. I'd be shocked if that's actually where they ended up. They're probably going to end up still in the 70-80% kind of range. I think that they're, like, we've seen that happen before, right? Where the PLQ's numbers among Anglophones really tanks, but then on election day, there's no sign that any of those seats were in any danger whatsoever, right? So
that's true. However, Eric, abstention could be much higher right now. I mean, many Anglos and allophones, traditional Liberal voters, are not happy right now, and they're not alone in being happy. The party is barely at 19%, and so sometimes victory or being competitive really makes you forget all the disagreements that you have internally. But yeah, they're not happy, and they could stay home. So basically the percentage could stay the same, but the amount of raw votes that you get, the absolute number of votes, could go down significantly, and you could have many surprises on the island of Montreal, I feel.
It was one of the contributing factors to the Liberals underperforming the polls in the last election, that the turnout in the West Island was a lot lower than in the rest of the province.
Absolutely. There was no way that Liberals would normally lose Châteauguay, for instance. A third of voters are non-Francophones. It was a cabinet minister, Pierre Moreau, for the Liberals, and they lost it. Even the CAQ didn't think they wouldn't win Châteauguay. When we look at the numbers, we see that the Anglo vote fell and the Francophone vote fell, and so the rug got pulled onto them. So
I got a question from Tony. Tony, yes, I do still have my calculator. It's my calculator. It's not from my CBC days. It's actually from my university days. I had this back. This calculator is probably 25, 30 years old anyway, and I still have it. So yes, Tony, I do still have the calculator. So we're still waiting for some more votes to be counted. Last I heard, the advance vote was something like 14%.
That's right. That's right.
Not a bad start, but...
Well, in 2016, there was 26% turnout. That's really low. But the good news is that I think the last time I checked, it was around 4:30 or 5 p.m. It was already at that level, 26%. So if you count the people who went to vote at night, perhaps it'll be in the low 30s. It's still very low, but it's higher than it was the last by-election in this riding recently. So
yeah. We're still waiting on more votes to be counted. What do you think is going to happen here with... So I know we're all watching to see if the PQ or the CQ is going to end up winning. And for everyone else, it's where they place. Now, like the Liberals, with your projections, the Liberals are always able to win a certain amount of seats because of their support among Anglophones. But will we get any hints here? And I know it's just one by-election, but will we get any hints here about who is the non-CAQ option that is going to be the alternative in the election? Because the PQ is going to finish at least first or second here, probably, but they won't finish first or second in the election unless something changes. No. It's all about who's going to be the official opposition, who's going to be, even if it's not the official opposition, the unofficial opposition,
Quebec solidaire has the left side of the spectrum in Quebec to its own. They're alone in left field. And the poll still has them at 15 or 16%. It hasn't gone up. So there's not a lot of support for left-wing politics right now in Quebec, which can be a surprise to many English Canadians, but that's true. And the Liberals, the thing is, and then again, we have to remember that there was always this space of Francophone Liberal voters that was always there. Sometimes they showed up a little more. But if you took the 2018 election, which was the worst in the history of the Liberals, take away Montreal, 27 ridings, take away Laval, 6 ridings, where Liberals won 5 of 6. And in the rest of Quebec, who finished second in the popular vote? The Liberals. But they didn't win much seat, but there's like this underlying, base of Francophone voters, and that base is gone now. That base, the polls show that they're just elsewhere. So they might come back at some point, but whatever Dominique Anglade is selling, they're not buying it. The legislature, when you ask who's the favorite prime minister or the favorite candidate for premier among Francophones, Dominique Anglade got 4%. 4%. I've never seen numbers like that for a liberal leader. So they're going to go in a tank. And what will it say about the Liberals tonight? Probably not much, but it could also look. Quebec solidaire had 21% in this riding in 2018, and tonight, they're projected at barely making it to double digits. So
to give the numbers from last time, the PQ at 31%, the CQ at 28%, Quebec solidaire had 22%, just under 22%. 21.7. It's okay. And the Liberals are at 15%, and the Greens had 2%. So we'll see. The Conservatives did not have a candidate who ran here last time. So, but to give you an idea of the last few elections, there was a by-election in 2016, but it's. Do you remember that by-election? I don't understand why they did so well.
Catherine Fournier was a star. She came on the scene, and it was still, Bernard Drainville was a very popular cabinet minister during the Marois government, and he tried to be the PQ leader, I think he lost to Pierre Cal-Pelado, and then he figured, you know what, I'm going to go back to media, and he went back to radio. But again, it was if you listed it 7 years ago or 8 years ago, if you listed the best PQ seats in the whole province, Marie-Victorin would be probably in the top 5. And that's, they're down to 7 seats right now. So that's where we are.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, and then in 2014, this was when the Liberals formed government. They won a majority then. They had 26% support, the PQ at 38, and the CEQ only at 21. But then if you go back further than that, 2012, 2008, the PQ is usually getting near around 50%, and the Liberals could be anywhere from 18 to 19. It would change from one election to the next. But, this was a riding that used to be a PQ stronghold. The Liberals would finish second. And that's pretty much what this riding was, like a lot of ridings in Quebec before the ADQ broke through a bit in 2007, and the CEQ kind of kept that going in 2012. So the fact that the Liberals could easily finish 5th maybe here, it's not good.
It's awful.
But, this used to be the kind of riding where at least they could count on being second. Although, Quebec politics, if you're looking in the 80s and the 90s, the early 2000s, it was really still just a two-party system, right?
That's right. That's right.
And now it's a multi-party system, but I think in another decade or so, it could be a two-party system again, but the parties could be not the Liberals and not the PQ.
Well, here's the thing, though. Again, with the Liberals, is that they have been in bad situations in the past. It's a cycle. They always come back because they have this layer, again, as I said, of fiscally right of center voters everywhere in the province. They find a way to get back. It's just that, right? They were 15 straight years almost in power. Very similar to the Ontario Liberals. I mean, that's the power, there's a wear and tear that comes with time. When you are in power for a long time, people blame you for everything, rightly or wrongly, and sometimes, yes, rightly. We could sometimes, this is for another live stream, but we'll talk about Jean Charest at some point. I mean, he has baggage in Quebec, and if he thinks he can win all the points in the Conservative leadership in Quebec, I think he's going to be very surprised. But yeah, there's a wear and tear of power, and the Liberals are feeling it right now. Could they come back in 10 years? I mean, if of course, naturally, Dominique Andelade would be gone October 4th. She can't stay if those numbers hold. Mm-hmm. And then if let's say somebody comes from the federal Liberals and come help out, and a popular figure that's outside of Montreal, I could see them coming back.
François-Philippe Champagne, maybe if...
Well,
doesn't win the leadership. We'll see.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe. Oh, are we doing this? Oh, yes, we are. I was thinking of Joe Lightbound in Quebec City.
That would be an interesting one. He would at least be able to say he wasn't wasn't tied at the hip to Justin Trudeau after.
There you go. Yeah. There you go. So
there you go. All right. Well, that works out. We did get a question from Wyatt Sharp asking about, what extent can we use these by-election results to project forward to the general? I think it's very specific in terms of this riding because of the PQ's history. And, for the Conservatives, they could be a huge story in this campaign in October, but it's not going to be in a place like this. It's going to be elsewhere in the province. So I think for me, it's mostly those trend lines to see if the CQ is gaining a lot or a little bit. Yeah. If the Conservatives actually do a pretty good number, if they get into double digits, I would be pretty impressed with that in a riding like this.
Yes.
And so I think it's more in that, right?
I agree. And, if the Conservatives do well, that means they're probably going to win a few seats in Quebec City, in the greater Quebec City area. And those seats would come at the expense of the CAQ. But then tonight, it would show that perhaps the CAQ can win back those seats by, winning more in the 450 in the suburbs of Montreal. I remember 4 years ago, many people called the CAQ the party of la capitale nationale. Of course, it's not where most seats are, but they won by a landslide in several of those ridings. But perhaps that it's becoming the party of suburban Montreal.
That's interesting to think of because when I think about the CAQ and the success that they've had, it's that they were able to if I'm thinking about this from the federal perspective, they were able to combine the votes for the Conservatives and the votes for the Bloc in, among Francophones. That's more or less the support that they've been able to build. But it is an interesting thought that if the CEQ becomes more of a party of the Montreal suburbs and some other regions of the province and not Quebec City, if that happens, I would start to be concerned if I was in the CEQ that sort of one of the pillars of my foundation is being whittled away.
We have 33 seats in the 450. You win maybe 30 of those. You add Eastern Townships, you add Trois-Rivières and the surrounding areas, you're at 45. And then suddenly you're sure to win. Perhaps not a majority, but you're sure to win. Then you had a few seats in Montreal. We'll have to come back to that at some point. We had a over-under before Christmas, right? Number of CAQ seats in Montreal. We'll come back to this at some point.
I feel like I did a bad on a lot of those, but anyway.
Oh, me too. Yeah, but it's it's a year out of. It was just for fun. People don't look at that video. It's not worth it. We'll tell you how it went. So add a few seats in Quebec City and a South Shore Quebec City, and then you're up to 60 seats. And so. I mean, the CAQ's support is not only very high; it's very well spread out.
Yeah.
It's in this electoral system. I know many people dislike this electoral system, but in this system that we have right now, it is really to the CAQ's advantage.
Oh, someone made a. Is there a party? I don't think the Ralliement Créditiste is running, are they? No, they don't have a. They don't have a party. Someone's making a joke.
That's been a while. Yeah.
I did see. Wait, let me just go through the list.
I think there's a Union Nationale.
Union Nationale, yes, that's the one. That's the one. Yeah. So there are 12 candidates. So we have one from the CQ, the PQ, the Conservatives, Québec solidaire, the Liberals, Climat Québec, Parti accès, propriété et équité, Parti pour l'indépendance du Québec, Union Nationale, Équipe autonomiste. I don't know why they still exist. If you're a fan of the Équipe autonomiste, I don't understand why you're still around.
They were against the merger 10 years ago.
I know, it was 10 years ago. That's it. And then there's an independent candidate and a candidate for the Parti vert.
Funny.
Maybe this will be the Union Nationale who will pull out a surprise.
I see that the Alex Tyrrell of the Parti vert du Québec, right now, him and I were tied. I haven't run yet, but we're tied so far with 0 votes.
Oh, just because you bring that up made me think of something. Just to make it clear, you don't have any relations with Catherine Fournier,
no,
right?
I don't. Actually, and that is not a joke. In Quebec, Fournier is a very common last name, especially from the Thetford Mines area and Abitibi also. So,
I see. Okay.
No relations.
I discovered that I share a common ancestor with René Lévesque. So there you go.
Really?
Yes, the first of my ancestors came to Quebec was also his first ancestor. One of them. Anyways, there you go. We're all related. There was a question with something with Union Nationale. I was reading about the election in 1981.
Oh, you're such a nerd. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
In the 1981 election, there was a strike at Radio-Canada, so they didn't have like an election night special. So TVA and Radio-Québec, they wanted to have a really great election night. They wanted to win the night. So they contracted out the results machine to a computer in Toronto. Great new technology. We're going to get the results before anybody else. The first results showed the Union Nationale leading in the polls, winning 30, 40 seats. They had a Marxist-Leninist who was leading in one of the ridings and was elected. And so it took several hours, or at least a long time, before they realized that the computer system was just giving votes alphabetically to the candidates on each riding. But that didn't stop, apparently, some of the journalists, some of the panelists, trying to explain how the Union Nationale, which at the time had about 4% support in the polls, suddenly made a comeback. And I was just reading in René Lévesque's biography that when he was watching those results, he obviously they were bad, so he had to turn to the English language coverage to find out that he had won that election. So maybe the Union Nationale will have a big surprise tonight.
Well, that's a good story. I don't think I had heard that story.
I desperately tried to find video of it, but I can't. I did find some newspaper articles, though, about how badly that night went for TVA. They've gotten better since then.
No, of course. Yeah, they're great now. I mean, not that I'm not in the Québécois bubble, but they do election nights very well.
Yeah, yeah, they do. Here's a good question. If the Equality Party, the Parti Égalité, could make a comeback in the near future, there was a thought about maybe that could happen. After, at around the last election, it seemed there was a lot of anger among Anglophone voters that they were being taken for granted by the Liberals. There was someone that they had named in one of the ridings, if I remember correctly, that he had been kind of parachuted in, and Anglophones in the area didn't like that. I haven't heard anything, though, about that kind of thing.
It's been in the Gazette and some newspaper articles in Montreal. They're making noises, but then again, this would not happen if the Liberals were at 25 or 30% in the polls. It's going badly, and right now everybody's leaving ship. But to form a new party only a few months out, and you need lists and emails and addresses and postal codes. It's not happening. They could try, but they're not going to be successful. And but this is a symptom of the Liberals polling very badly, and Dominique Andelade trying to do a big split as much as she can. So in 6 months we won't talk about this anymore. It's a very interesting concept. They did win 4 seats in 1989, but I don't think that there's you need really good organization today to win. Jack Layton 2011 is the exception. That's sliding in the bottle. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. One of the Equality Party M&As crossed the floor to the PQ, oddly enough. And I don't think his voters would have appreciated that. There was a question about the Union Nationale. This can't be the same party. They must have just took it over the name, because that party's been gone for a long time.
It dissolved in 89.
Yeah. So someone's just taken the name. So, all right. We do have another polling box has been counted, Philippe. This is very exciting. And the numbers are about the same. 46.5% for the CQ Dorismond, 23.8% for Pierre Nantel. Oh, wait, we're just getting some more. All right, maybe we're starting to get some votes starting to be counted. So now we're up to 5 boxes.
27.6% participation. That's bad, but it's better than we've seen. So
is that the final estimate, or is that going to be updating throughout the night?
It's a current estimate. So we'll see.
Yeah, well, 28%. It's a by-election. You can't. Sometimes, when I was watching the results in PEI, they got about 50%, which is impressive. But anyway, if you can get up to 30 or 40, it's usually not too bad for by-election. But we'll see where this ends up as the night goes on. But so right now...
It was a beautiful day today in Montreal. It was sunny, it was warm, it was beautiful. No excuse. Yeah.
So right now we still got a 20-point lead for Shirley Dorismond over Pierre Nantel, but it's only 80 votes. And again, we don't know where these are. They could. It's not like on CNN where you have the big map, or the counties that are reporting and all that. These could all be in areas that are friendly for the CQ. But we're getting a few more votes counted now, and now it's 40 to 27%. We're up to 6 boxes, but it's only 4%. Only 4% of the polling boxes have been open. And Alex Tyrrell has one more vote than you do.
So close.
Sorry to tell you. But the only other candidate with over 1% right now is Martine Ouellet, aside from the major 5 parties.
And that's 8 votes. That's
8 votes. Yeah. So
extended family.
Yeah, but the 2 candidates under double digits right now, and Casabonne of the Conservatives 9.3, and Émilie Nollet is at 6.9 for the Liberals. So. You were watching a lot of the polls that were being done here. I was very surprised to see this many polls done for by-election. Now, were there any that were not done by a party? Because they all seem to be done by someone.
There were 2. One was leaked from the Parti québécois to me, and I published it in L'Actualité with many asterisks. And the second one, after seeing that leak poll, I figured I wanted one. So I talked to Main Street Research. I knew that they had been on the field in Marie-Victorin before, and also in 2018 they did poll Marie-Victorin and were really close to the final result. So I did ask Main Street to have this poll, and it was radically different from the leaked poll from the Parti québécois. It showed the CQ winning by 7 points. So, again, local polling, we have to be very careful. It's still interesting, and we'll talk about it, but we know that we have to be very careful with local polling, especially ones that are leaked. The Parti québécois poll had the PQ winning by 12 points. I can tell you that is not happening. The PQ could win tonight, but they're not winning by 12 points. It didn't make sense. But yeah, so we only had 2 polls. And again, they both had the Parti québécois at the same level, 37 and 36%. But the difference was the non-CAQ vote. The Main Street had CAQ in the low 40s, and the other parties all in either single digit or 10%. Whereas the leak poll had the Liberals and the Québec solidaire, I think it was 15 and 10%. So if you're a traditional liberal voter, and you're busy today, you're working, you're commuting in your car across the Jacques Cartier Bridge, do you really take the time to go vote tonight? You should, you definitely should, but I know that many people in a by-election will not go vote. So I tend to believe that this is going to be a two-way race, although I see that Québec solidaire, 16% right now. It's not too bad. We'll have to wait and see, but
yeah. By the way, we've been fact checked by one of the commenters, Vincent Gallozo, saying that Michel Lebrun, who is the candidate for the Union Nationale, was also the last leader of the Union Nationale.
It's the same guy.
So I guess it's the same guy. So if he did restart the party, it's still a different party. If you don't have the same bank account for that entire time, you're a different party. So,
33 years later, huh? Wow.
Let's assume that this is correct. So thank you, Vincent, for the information. Yeah. So right now let's go over it. We got Shirley Dorismond of the CQ with 37%, 265 votes. Pierre Nantel of the PQ is at 28%. Shophika Vaithyanathasarma is at 16% for the Quebec solidaire, which is not too bad because they had 22% last time.
Yep.
And Anne Casabonne is currently at 10% even. And you have Émilie Nollet at 6%, Martine Ouellet as just under 2%, and then everybody else is in below 1%. And we're still pretty early on, though 8% now has been counted. And the turnout rate is now up to nearly 32%, so that's not so bad. Getting better. So maybe it's going to go up as things go on, as we get through it. But I don't know. It's a good start for the CQ. I mean, we'll see how things go. If it ended up this way, with the CQ winning this by 9 or 10 points, honestly, I wouldn't be too surprised.
No.
But it would not be good for the PQ. If they can't clear 30%, that's going to be trouble. We did. Another box seemed to have just been counted, and it did get a teeny bit closer. But Pierre Nantel is still at 28.4%. So. But you know what? He's only 69 votes behind, so he's not too far. We'll see when this is counted.
Unofficially, I had people asking me my prediction for tonight, and of course, I'm very careful with prediction. It's funny that I say that because I don't really do prediction. I do projections, which is based on data, not on my impressions. And I said,
distinction without a difference, Philippe. No one cares.
It is a difference. It is an important difference. But for my prediction, which is not scientific, the range that I had was from PQ +2 to CAQ +6 or something. That range.
That seems reasonable to me.
It seemed reasonable, and so perhaps the CQ wins by 3 or 4 points. The CQ was not going to win by a landslide. We knew that. But then again, the race right now, even though it's a very low score so far, it looks like what we expected. A close race between the CQ and the PQ. Québec solidaire third, strong third right now, but we'll see.
Yeah, and it's getting a bit closer now because the latest numbers now have CQ at about 36% and the PQ at just about 31%. I think that's where both parties being somewhere in the 30s and it being pretty tight. I think that's what I would have expected. If these numbers hold for Québec solidaire, though, I would be pretty happy if I was Gabriel Nadeau-Dubois. Just the fact that Québec solidaire is still holding its own. Yeah,
moral victories. In politics, moral victories is loser talk for me. But it's true. If they finish a strong third. If they finish third, basically they are where they are at last election.
I think they take that though.
They would, but you would expect. I mean, I wrote about this in L'actualité and McLean's actually a few weeks ago. Is that they are satisfied with so little. Last election, they went from 3 to 10 seats. Great. Okay, maybe we're onto something here if you're Québec solidaire. But since then, they hit a ceiling, and that ceiling is actually really low. So they're barely above the Parti québécois, a few points above the Parti québécois in the polls. So I'm just surprised that they're satisfied by so little.
I guess it depends what they expect and what their goal is, right? If they have a long game where it's to replace the Liberals as the official opposition and then have a right versus left kind of battle with the CQ in 10 years, maybe you need this kind of incrementalism. But the fact they did go from 3 to 10,
That was big. That was big. I acknowledge that. I didn't have them at 10. I had them at 8.
I had them at 10.
I know. I remember. And you did, you said, I think they're going to win a Rouyn-Noranda. I was like, you're nuts. They're not winning Rouyn-Noranda. Maybe close second.
I should have retired right after that.
Oh, that was a beautiful. On that night, I was sitting in Radio-Canada on election night, and I saw Rouyn-Noranda, and I thought of you like, wow, okay, you got there. I had them in Quebec City. I had them competitive in Sherbrooke. They did win Sherbrooke. I think they could win Sherbrooke again, especially with all the students there. Cégep and a university in the same riding. It's good for them.
And in some of these ridings, like in Sherbrooke, the Conservative candidate might peel away enough CQ vote to kind of make it harder for them to make some of these gains. So
and Sol Zanetti in Jean Lesage, that's in Quebec City, the Limoilou area, is praying that the Conservatives have a decent candidate so they can split the vote with the CQ and still win. He won. I think he had 36% of the vote. He was for a long time in my projections not projected to win, but now he's back being competitive because of the split vote on the right in Quebec City.
Yeah, and Taschereau will be an interesting one now that Catherine Dorion is not running again. See what happens there. So let's see. Let's look at the numbers again. We're up to 12% that have been counted, and the turnout is now nearing 35%. So it's going up. It's going up.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, but it's still a 10-point lead right now for the CQ.
Why don't they know the turnout? That's one question I have. Why does it keep switching?
That's a good question.
They don't know right away how many people voted.
That's a good question. They should, right? They should have that easily tallied, but I guess they don't count them. Like when you cross out the name, you don't tick one, right?
Yeah.
I assume it must be some sort of extrapolation from what they've already counted, because every time I've ever seen a live estimate of turnout, it's always way off. It's always way off. And I always on election night, it's always the case because whatever system that the different networks use, it always makes these huge extrapolations and it ends up being totally different. And so anyway, I don't know why. But anyway, we're up to 13% now that have been counted. And it is still a 10-point lead right now for Dorismond over Nantel. Now it's just about 8 points. So, it's about 150 votes between the two. If any of you were watching maybe on Twitter with me, the results in where was it? In Athabasca and the one in Fort White, the by-elections out in the prairies.
Right.
They flipped right at the end. It was kind of amazing to see those. They almost Fort White almost flipped, but so we'll see. So we shouldn't jump.
But it was low vote. I mean, didn't the winner get less than 1,000 votes? I thought it was low numbers.
It was pretty low in Athabasca, and there wasn't a huge amount of votes in those ridings, because especially out in the prairies, the ridings have fewer voters than they would even in Quebec, despite the fact there's 125 ridings in the province. But
and Casabonne will probably outscore the Liberals.
Mm-hmm.
How bad is that for Liberals? My goodness. Oh, God.
And Casabonne would have
some... the Liberals were not going to do well in Marie-Victorin. We know this, but this is really bad. So.
Yeah, she would have some profile, but I'm not sure if she would have a clientele that would really... They might, it's a name that might get people to pay attention, but I don't think people loved her to the extent that they'd vote for her and they would have voted for the Liberals otherwise or anything like that. But, if this is the kind of results we can expect in a lot of Francophone ridings that aren't on the island of Montreal or in the Outaouais, where the Conservatives are going to outpoll the Liberals, then that could be that could make for a long night in October for the Liberal Party.
In 2018, were you on CBC television that night in the Quebec election?
I was doing English CBC. Yeah.
I was switching between Radio Canada and CTV, and CTV News called the election at I think it was 8:08. It was really, really fast, and so and I remember there were reporters at the meeting of the CAQ, and it was basically, you won, they called it, and so nobody reacted, nobody was celebrating, it's impossible, it's been 10 minutes.
We waited a lot longer than that, I think, because we weren't sure if the CAQ was going to get to over 63,
as one should.
63. So we were waiting, I think, for that, but I remember I remember because I think there was shots. We were taking shots of the CQ like headquarters, and the other TVs were saying he had won, and so it was kind of confusing for people. But
the thing is, I can tell you that in the Quebec election, I will be with Nouveau. I will also do hits for CTV, but I will be with Nouveau. It's Bell Media for an election night. I hope they don't call it at 8:05. I mean, they very well could if they have the same algorithms, and we see the polling, and we see they very well could. It's just that you take all the thrill away from election night. But oh well.
Yeah, well, that's what happens in Ontario now because they have more of the automated counting, and on election night there's usually this nice calm counting of votes, and you can kind of dissect things slowly. In Ontario, it was bang, here's 50 ridings, and then here's another 60, and there you go, the night's over. It was kind of anticlimactic. But speaking of anticlimactic, the numbers aren't moving too much right now for the by-election. We got 36% for the CAQ, Shirley Dorismond. We've got 29% for Pierre Nantel of the PQ. We're still looking at about 191 votes separating the two candidates, which is not a huge amount. The Quebec solidaire is at 15%, so they're clearly in third. There was a question of this: what would be the race for third here? And then you have Conservatives at 9% and Casabonne, and Émilie Nollet of the Liberals at 6.8%, and Martine Ouellet, returning with her own party, Climat Québec, is at 1.9%. And now the Greens are approaching, if you round up 1%, Alex Tyrrell has 0.7%. So we'll see what happens. And Union Nationale has one vote. So at least Michel Lebrun went out to cast a ballot. So there you go. We're up to 19% of the votes counted. We've got 35% turnout so far. Not bad. I mean, especially since this person is going to sit in the National Assembly for what, a few months? And then it'll be the summer recess?
They're going to be assermentés, sworn in I think 2 weeks. Or 10 days, and it's going to sit until the Fête Nationale Saint-Jean-Baptiste, and then summer break, then the dissolution in August. So 8 weeks, maybe. Yeah, that's it.
It is a bit strange. I think in Quebec the laws are a bit different in terms of holding a by-election, because there are some vacancies right now in Ontario, but no one's going to replace those with an election coming so soon.
It's 6 months, the law here. I don't know what it is in Ontario, but
it's 6 months everywhere. But I think the difference is in some provinces you can, because you could have done this federally before, the Liberals changed the rules before, but you could set a by-election date to be after the next general election, so that, while the by-election would officially start in February, there was going to be a vote in October, so there's no election that happens. You could have an infinitely long by-election campaign, but I think things have changed. Maybe they have changed federally. I'm not sure in Quebec, but I remember some talk about the fact that they had to have this by-election, despite the fact that it's so close to election day.
But I do remember when Catherine Fournier won the Longueuil mayoral race. I thought the CAQ could call this before Christmas. There was a possibility, and they my contacts tell me they thought about it, but then the Omicron wave showed up, and then they figured, we'll wait until this winter, and then the Omicron wave stayed a while, and we had another curfew, and and many things happened, and so they just figured, you know what, we'll just call it at the latest possible, and it was almost 6 months when they called it. So
because Legault, I remember him saying that he would call it after the holidays. I guess we didn't know he meant,
Easter.
Almost Easter, I guess, but whatever holiday was in March, St. Patrick's Day, maybe that's what he meant. It's starting to get a bit closer. The CQ is at 34.8, and Pierre Nantel, the PQ, is at 29.1
in percentages. But when you look at the raw votes, it's
200 votes ish.
Yeah. It's not a lot, but it's been steady.
Yeah, that's one of the things. When it's steady like that, while there are some regional variations within this riding, it's not that one place votes 60% CQ and the other one votes 60% PQ. It's a bit more evenly distributed. So, maybe we're not going to have huge surprises. But I don't think, based on how much the votes have been counting, we probably don't have the big advance vote. And if I recall, and Philippe, maybe you can correct me, but the PQ, I think, has a good history with the advance vote, right?
Well, they do historically, because boomers used to vote for the Parti québécois. But now boomers have switched to the CAQ. And so if there is a big drop of advanced votes at some point tonight, it's probably not going to help the PQ. The older voters and the boomers, have massively switched for the Coalition Avenir Québec, and so, oh man, if the PQ doesn't break 30% tonight, that would be. Yeah. I mean, what a heartbreak. However, I mean, they did work really hard to win this. I mean, every one of their M&As basically showed up. I mean, I saw what's his name, Martin Ouellet. He's from Côte-Nord. Also came to Marie-Victorin to knock on doors. Of course, Pascal Bérubé from Matane. I mean, they all came along to help out. Pierre Nantel, who's a known figure, and he's not even at 30%. That has to hurt.
Yeah, it's they could still end up squeaking this out but it looks like if they do, it's going to be close. Just to remind everybody, their worst performance in their history was the last election when they got 30.8%. So they're currently down about 1.5 points from that. Which, if the PQ only lost 1.5 points in the next election, they'd probably be pretty happy because the polls have been losing maybe almost half their support.
But in terms of seats, it's not. That doesn't help them at all. Wow.
No. And if they don't win this, then the only seat that they have anywhere within spitting distance of Montreal is Joliette.
But don't tell anyone from Joliette that it's a suburb of Montreal because they will be very angry. It really isn't. But yeah, it's an hour and 15 minutes maybe away from Montreal. It's it's still closer to Montreal than Quebec City, but it's not in the Montreal region. Yeah,
all the other seats they have are in Saguenay, the Côte-Nord, or the Gaspésie, the Bas-Saint-Laurent. So, very much the regions as they're called in Quebec.
Wow.
We'll see. This is not moving in their favor. For the CQ, jumping up from, they had 28.4% last time. They're now at 35.5%, so they're up about 7 points. That's pretty good, and that is more or less in line with where the polls have been, right? Most of them. There has been some that have them in the low 30s, but if we just did like a uniform swing of the last election, you'd have
that would be it.
You'd have the CQ gaining 5, 6, 7 points. So.
My projection on QC125, Quebec125.com, has them at 35%. So we'll see. But I do have the PQ also at 35%. Well, I think it's 34.6 and so it's down. 35, yeah. So
so this will be we'll hold on. I know that Philippe is going to be leaving us at 9:00. He has
have to put on a tie and a suit.
Yeah, he didn't want to dress up for us, but we'll definitely stay until we have a very clear result. But certainly, it's a gap that's now about 6 points. It's a gap that's still only about 250 votes, which is not a lot when you're considering how many have been counted. There's only been 4,000 or so that have been counted so far. So it's not a big gap between the two of them, but as Philippe mentioned, the Nantel he's not been making any ground. They've just been holding at these numbers here.
Well, this is going to be overanalyzed over the next few months, as we're doing now. Of course, we're overanalyzing, but this is the fun part, right?
Yes.
It's just again the heartbreak of the Parti québécois and Pierre Nantel if he doesn't make it. I mean, he could still win, but right now it doesn't look good. How many votes have been counted in total? What, 10%?
No, we're still getting pretty good. No, 31% of votes. 31% of the boxes have been open. 9% of, I guess, the total turnout of what it could be. So we're already at.
Oh, I
a third.
See. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, we got a question from Marc-Olivier Gingras. Where are you heading? Where are you going on TV if they want to double screen? You can't turn this one off.
Yes. No. You have to watch Eric. I'm going.
He's going to give us a special sign. He's going to give us a special sign on the air. So.
I'm going to go in at Nouveau at 10:00 and CTV Montréal at 11:00.
Oh boy! I'll be in bed.
Well, I mean, at 10:00, will we know the winner? We hope so, but
I think so. Yeah, definitely.
It's slow. No, maybe not that slow.
Well, look, it's been an hour,
we'll be on,
and there are 33%, and they only really started counting maybe half an hour ago.
That's true.
So
That's true.
I think we'll be pretty close to the finish here. So CTV Montreal, Nouveau,
That's right.
and of course you can check out Philippe at 338canada.com, qc125.com as well. And
Very nice of you to say that. Yes.
yeah, and you can read him in
I, I
L'Actualité and in. Are you still writing in
are
Maclean's
are
as well?
you for the time being I am. Yes.
Okay.
There have been some changes at McLean's at the top,
Yes.
and we're not too sure what's going on, as you may know.
Yeah.
As far as I know, I'm still writing for McLean's. Are you on Reddit,
No.
Eric?
I'm
You're
not
not,
on Reddit.
because yeah, you're a star on Reddit, much more so than I am. But I noticed that in Reddit, Canadian Politics, they did add a link to your live stream. I'm just curious to see.
Oh, terrific. Well, if you're coming to us from Canada Politics, hello. I do stop by now and then. I'm just a lurker. I don't have an account or anything. So anyway. Well, that's very nice. I'm happy that people are coming from different places. All right, so you have, it's 8:59. I said I would let you go at 9. Do you have some final comments, some final wise words to give to the viewers?
Well, I want to thank you for this, Eric. As usual, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. People who are watching this, please subscribe to Eric's, not only his YouTube channel, but also the writ.ca. It's pretty good. I read you all the time. I don't comment much because I never do, but I read all the time. I will say 226 votes gap between the two. It's not over, but Pierre Nantel is really not. He's not winning by 12 points as the PQ internal poll showed. And
can't believe an internal poll.
Well, that's the thing. They leaked it to me, and I said, well, if that's the data you're working with, this may explain some stuff. You need to make good decisions. You need good data, and if the Parti québécois has bad data or data that inflates their numbers all the time, of course they will make bad decisions. So if you're with the Parti québécois right now and you're listening to this, get yourself a better pollster. You have to for your own sake. I know it's expensive, but you have to spend your money wisely, because if you get bad data, you will make mistakes. But that's my final word. Eric, merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup tout le monde qui ont regardé. On n'a pas beaucoup parlé français, mais bon, pendant les élections québécoises, on va refaire ça et je vais faire pratiquer le français à Eric, je vous promets.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay? Allez, à bientôt. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Salut. All right, so I'm going to stick around because I still want to see what's going to happen with these results. But now I will be relying much more on questions from you guys to keep the conversation going. So just to set the table of where we are again, where's this website? Which one are you talking about? Reddit? You can find it there. My website is thewrit.ca. You can find Philippe's websites at 338canada.com. And if you want to, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'd really appreciate it. I'm trying to get my subscriptions up. So just subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. You might just get notified now and then. I'm not sure how it works. So we'll set the table again. So we're now an hour after the polls close in Marie-Victorin. This is a riding that is on the South Shore of Montreal in Longueuil. Sort of a suburb of Montreal. It's pretty francophone ridings, as Philippe was mentioning early on. It's a very urbanized place. And this is a seat that the Parti québécois has held with virtually no exception. There's only one by-election in 1984 that they lost. They've held this since the riding was created in 1981. It's been a pretty strong PQ riding for all of that time. The CAQ finished second last time. The Quebec solidaire was third. It's a big test for the Parti québécois. They need to hold on to this riding to show that they're not a party that's in the death throes of a party that's no longer very competitive. They have a good candidate in Pierre Nantel. He used to be the NDP MP for the Longueuil-Saint-Hubert riding. He had crossed the floor to the Greens before he was defeated in the 2019 election, but he is a well-known commodity in that area. Whereas the CAQ, they're banking on Shirley Dorismond. She is a nurse, and she's been involved with the nursing association unions in Quebec. And so, this is really what the contest really is. We're watching as well to see how Quebec solidaire does. And the Conservatives, who have been rising in the polls in Quebec, in some polls they've been in second behind the CAQ, a first test for them under their leader, Éric Duhaime. So for the Liberals, what's going on with this party? And for them, it doesn't seem to be doing well as we're looking at the numbers. So on the screen, you can see this is from Elections Quebec. And so far we've got 43% of the polling boxes have been opened, so we're pretty far into the count. 36% of people have so far, that is the estimated turnout. And we have Shirley Dorismond of the CQ leading with 33.7%. Pierre Nantel is behind at 29.6%. There's only about 230 so votes between the two of them, so it is still pretty close. You have Shophika Vaithyanathasarma. I keep on messing it up. I'm very, very sorry. I had it before. Vaithyanathasarma. She has 16.5%, and that is a good result for the Quebec solidaire. They had just under 22% last time. And then you have Anne Casabonne, who is from the Conservatives. She's at 9.8%. And Émilie Nollet of the Liberals is at 6.9%. That would be a historic low for the Liberal Party. And Martine Ouellet, who has started her own party, Climat, Quebec. She used to be the leader of the bloc. She ran for the leadership of the PQ a couple times. She's at less than 2% of the vote. And Alex Tyrrell, who is the leader of the Green Party in Quebec, he's at an even 1%. So that's where we are. And I'm going to be looking at your comments. So if you have any, you can share them. If you have any questions. I saw one here from Ross Shearer says, does this mean anything for the sovereignty question? It seems like that's not really a topic anymore. When there have been polls done on it, there hasn't been that many, the sovereignty option is somewhere usually in the mid-30s. But it's just not really on the table anymore. No one's really talking about it. So it's one of the reasons why the PQ is struggling. So the fact that the PQ is not doing well in this riding, which did vote oui in 1995, is just another sign of how this debate has changed, right? There's a question here from Ali about how the riding votes federally. If I remember correctly, this riding is held by the Liberals, I think, or split in part between the Liberals and the Bloc. But it is the kind of riding where you would expect the Liberals, at least the current version of the Liberals, in the Bloc Québécois to be contesting this kind of seat. Question from Brandon Paradis, is the result encouraging for the Conservatives? 9.8% right now, that's not too bad. For a party that usually can't clear 2% anywhere in the province, to be at nearly 10% is a pretty good sign. The polls have been really good for the Conservatives. They've been anywhere from, 14 to 24% in recent polls in Quebec. But this is not where they're strong. They're strong in the Quebec City region. So the fact that they're doing nearly 10% of the vote in Longueuil, I'd say that's a pretty good result for them. And the fact that they're ahead of the Liberals are only at 7%, that is a very good result compared to where the Liberals are. Theo asks, will a 2% score for Martine Ouellet discourage her for the 2022 election? No, I don't think so. She is not. She does not seem to be someone who has been very discouraged by her political parcours, as we say. She's had a pretty rough go when she was leader of the Bloc Québécois, and she's back. So I don't imagine this will discourage her too much. I'm not sure that she expected to do very well. The fact that she still managed 2% as a party that virtually no one's heard of is not terrible. But just looking again through your questions. Well, there's a question about the Ontario election, if Ford will win or so. 100% he will win again. We'll see. This is about the Quebec politics now. The polls in Quebec and Ontario have been good for Ford, so I imagine that his chances of being reelected are pretty good. So just to take another look at where the numbers are, we're still looking at a gap that's 3 or 4 points between Dorismond and Nantel. And in terms of the number of votes, it's still only about 250 votes. So we're not talking about a lot of changes between the two candidates, but it's been like this all night. The PQ has been only a couple times over the 30% mark. The CQ number has come down a bit. The fact that they're now at 33, they were at 35, 36 before. So that might give some hope for the PQ, but they do have a lot of votes that they need to clear in order to get back ahead. Mathieu says that the advance votes might have been older people who are voting, which is, I'm sure, the case for people who are also voting on election day. But it's true that the advance votes, if they are predominantly of older people, then it could be helpful to the CQ. But PQ also does pretty well among older voters too. So we'll see. And it's hard to know if they haven't been included. It's unlikely. The advance votes, because they're the biggest polling boxes, usually take the longest to count and to have the numbers out. So that's probably where we'll be at the end of the night, just to see where we are in terms of the count. Still got about half of the boxes left to count, but that can start to go pretty quickly because it just means that those are the bigger boxes and they've been counted all night. So more and more are getting to the point where they're getting to the end of the count. So we'll see where that's going to be. Thank you, Golden Gales. One Longueuil riding is blocked, the other is Liberal friendly, correct. And this riding doesn't fit exactly into a federal riding. So, Ross, will I do a live stream for Vancouver Kilchena? Maybe. I'm not sure if that's going to be very competitive, but we'll see. This is a riding in BC where Kevin Falcon is trying to get a seat in the BC legislature, just became leader of the Liberal Party out in British Columbia. There'll be a by-election at the end of the month. We'll see if there's interest in that, but I'm not expecting it to be all that competitive. But one of the reasons why I wanted to do the by-election special for this one is because it is a preview of the upcoming general election that's going to be in Quebec in October. So that's where the interest is for me. Is there an NDP equivalent in this race? From Luis asks that. You would more or less say Quebec solidaire is the NDP equivalent, in the sense that it's the mainstream party that's on the left, but Quebec solidaire, arguably more to the left than the NDP. It's also a sovereigntist party, though it's not its major issue, but it is a sovereigntist party. So that's sort of what the NDP version is, but it's not a clear link between the two. The NDP doesn't have a provincial party. It had in recent elections. Maybe it's still existing, I'm not sure, but there's been attempts to try to create a Quebec NDP, but it hasn't been very successful. The NDP used to have a party in Quebec a long time ago, and it then became the Parti social-démocrate, I think, and it was one of the parties that ended up, through various kind of permutations, being one of the ones that formed Quebec solidaire. When Quebec solidaire joined a number of parties, it's a bit of a more of a wandering trail. Patrick Quinn, so far the PLQ is looking like they're heading for a rough general election. Yeah, because we've seen polls among Francophones that they're at 8, 9, 11%. This is a riding that's predominantly Francophone, and they're at 7%. If the PLQ is going to drop to single digits among Francophones, they're going to have a lot of trouble winning anything off the island of Montreal, which they already had trouble doing in the last election, but it could be a rough go for them. Those seats, though, on the West Island give them a good base that if no other party is really very strong, that they can probably still form the official opposition. This is an interesting question. Bello, do you think tonight results would demotivate the Liberal base to vote in October? I imagine that by October this by-election result will be forgotten, but I imagine as well that the narrative around the Liberal Party is going to get a lot darker for the next little while. And if the media decides through its coverage that the Liberals are a failing party and they're not going to be a big factor in the next election, then that can have some knock-on effects. So in that sense, the by-election results could turn out to be problematic for the Liberals in the larger sense of whether people think that this party is on the right track, whether anyone wants to run for them in the next campaign. It has those kinds of impacts because if we're hearing only for the next few weeks about how badly things are going for the Liberals, although I think more of the focus might be on the PQ if they lose this, they drop in the polls, that has an impact again on fundraising and organization. That's an interesting. Ronan says, or Ronan, the watch the Quebec solidaire drop the sovereignty principle if they become official opposition. I mean, the party will bristle if anyone says they're not a sovereignist party, but it's clearly not their priority in the same way as Parti québécois. And if they became the official opposition, then again, that would probably more be the focus being on the opposition to the government rather than being a sovereignist party. And again, because it's not a topic of conversation in Quebec, Quebec solidaire doesn't really need to talk about sovereignty. No one really wants to hear about that, apart from people who support the PQ. Some people support the Quebec solidaire. So there is that incentive for the party to put that debate to the side because they have far more traction to gain if they are just a progressive party and fulfilling the space of a progressive party in Quebec, because there is the space for one, and so it wants to be that party. Jared, you asked if PQ and QS could merge. There was debate about that before, and there was talk about the two parties getting together, but it was rejected by the parties. I can't recall exactly the details of it, but I think that the membership of both PQ and Quebec Solidaire did vote for on it at one point, but it didn't get anywhere. So let's review where the votes are. The gap between Shirley, Dorismond, and Pierre Nantel starting to get a little bit wider. It's now 500 votes, or nearly 500 votes. The CQ is now at 34.8%, and Pierre Nantel is at 29.4%. It's starting to look harder for Nantel to make up those nearly 500 votes, because now we're at 59% of the ballot boxes having been counted. So that's going to be that'll be tough for Nantel to come back, because we haven't seen a back and forth. We haven't seen lots of movement throughout the evening. But when you look at this donut chart here, you really see how this is a riding that's being dominated by these parties, the CQ, the PQ, to a lesser extent Quebec Solidaire. But it also does show that this is still pretty close, but for the Parti québécois, close is not going to do it. The last time they lost this riding was 1984 in a by-election, and for a long time the PQ could easily get 50% of the vote in a riding like this. So the fact that they're now at 29.2%, which is a drop of about a point and a half from the election in 2018, this would be the new low for the PQ. And with a decent candidate who had name recognition, that's going to be a problem for the Parti québécois. We're just comparing historical bests, and for the CQ, if they get 34.9, around 35%, that would be their best. The best performance they got was in 2018 when they got 28.4% of the vote. For Quebec Solidaire, this will rank somewhere in between, because they got 21.7% last time. They're now at 15.5%, but they've been as low as just 4.5% of the vote they got in 2008. For the Liberals, though, this is really their worst performance, 6.7%. They're not. This is going to set a record low for them, as well as the PQ, because the worst that the Liberals have ever done was 13%, which was in the 2016 by-election, and now they're looking like they're going to get about half that. In 1984, when they won this, they had 58% of the vote. Just to look at the bottom of the list, Martine Ouellet is now at 1.85%. It's really not a very strong performance for a former federal party leader and two-time candidate for the leadership of the PQ. The Greens are at less than 1%. It can sometimes be hard for Green Party candidates to be successful in by-election. In some cases, people consider them sort of like a none of the above vote, but in other by-elections it can be that, why bother voting for this party? There's no chance they're going to win the seat. This seems to be the latter case, because they did get about 2% of the vote last time in 2018. And looking down further, you have the Parti indépendantiste, or Parti pour l'indépendance du Québec, or something like that, has 14 votes. And as we were discussing earlier tonight, Union Nationale, which is a revival of the old party of Maurice Duplessis, who governed the province during the Grande Noirceur, has 7 votes. And he's beating Équipe Autonomiste, the people who did not want the ADQ to merge with the CEQ back in 2011 to 2012, has 6 votes. But at the top of the list, we're now at a gap of about 510 votes between Dorismond and Nantel. For the PQ, if they get below 30%, just the fact that they'll be below 30% could be, I think, a real moral defeat, because this means they've dropped support, and you're not winning seats with less than 30% of the vote. For the Conservatives, they're now over 10%. So the fact that they'll be in double digits, if they can hold this, will be a promising result for them. But as I've said before, this is not a riding where anyone would have expected them to do pretty well. This is not where they're trying to win seats. They're trying to win seats in the Quebec City region and in the Beauce and places like that. Matt Grotto asks, are the Liberals now vulnerable in Hull and Pontiac? Pontiac is like a seat that is probably closer to the West Island, not in the sense of who lives there, but in the sense of how strongly liberal it is. There's a very large Anglophone population in Pontiac. Hull is a riding where I would be maybe a little bit more concerned if I was the Liberals, because the CQ is able to win Gatineau, which is the riding just next to Hull. And, if the CQ can win in Gatineau, then maybe they can win in Hull. So I'd say that they could be vulnerable, because Hull is a riding with a lot of francophones. It's not just an Anglophone riding, despite the fact that it's just across the river from Ottawa. So for the Liberals, they're going to have to be concerned about everything except, a seat like Pontiac, and then some of the ones on the West Island. Everything else they're going to have to fight for, I think. Dead Dynamite wants some hot takes from the by-election. Is that from me or for everybody? Good night for the CQ. Decent night for the Conservatives. They can at least be happy with it. And for Quebec solidaire, they more or less held some of their vote, so they can at least not feel defeated. Bad night for the PQ. Bad night for the Liberals. That's what it's looking like. If these votes hold, we're now at a nearly 600 vote gap between Dorismond and Nantel. So for the CQ, we're starting to get to the end game, it seems to me. We're at 69% of the ballots counted. Might be still be waiting for those advanced polls. Turnout right now is about 37%, so not bad. But, you can see here we go. I've been doing the math in my head the whole time. It's 595 vote lead for the CQ right now. Just looking at your comments here. Philippe Bernier-Cormier asks, is this as much of a disaster for the PQ as it looks, or were they expecting under 10%? I'm pretty sure the polls that I'd seen, and again, the polls were somewhat, they had big caveats and asterisks because they always seem to be leaked by someone. Generally had them at least in double digits. So I think anything under 10% is pretty bad for them. But, you can imagine people not feeling very motivated to vote for the Liberals right now in a by-election where they have no chance of winning. And none of the news surrounding the Liberals in Quebec has been very positive. And just for everybody to know, if you didn't already know, the affiliations between the Quebec Liberals and the federal Liberals, there's none. They're not connected parties. They're friendly parties for sure, and sometimes they're more friendly and sometimes they're less, but they are different parties, and for a lot of Quebecers, they're seen as different parties. The Trudeau Liberals won seats in the last election that the Anglade Liberals would have no hope of winning in the upcoming election in Quebec. Yes, Adam, your question, is it fair to say that the fading of the sovereignty issue has hurt the Liberals almost as much as PQ? I think so, because there was a convergence between the Federalists and the Sovereignists after the 1980 referendum. Almost, it was over 90% in most elections of Quebecers were voting for either the Liberals or the PQ. That was the main issue. That was the only thing that was really the big issue. And it was a two-party system because of that. So the fact that sovereignty is no longer a big issue means that the PQ has dropped back, but it does, I think, mean that the Liberals have lost their reason for existing a bit. Because the Liberals used to have support from more centrist Quebecers, Federalist, yes, but maybe the business community, bit more conservative, small c conservative Quebecers maybe, who weren't comfortable with PQ, which was a social democratic party, which was a bit further to the left. It was for sovereignty, obviously. So I think now what's happened is that the CQ has been able to eat the lunch of the PQ by going after nationalist voters who might vote for sovereignty but don't care about it enough that it's their top priority, and has also been able to eat up the francophone small c conservative vote that would back the Liberals. Quebec solidaire is also eating away at some of the PQ vote, but they're not getting as much as the Liberal vote. So I think that's been the real problem for the Liberals, is that they've been reduced so much among francophone Quebecers that I think for a lot of French speakers, they still seem like the party of Anglophones and not much else. They don't really have a reason for existing. They've recently done a bit of a move to the left to try to be a bit more of a progressive party, maybe a bit more like the Quebec, the federal Liberals. But that space is already kind of occupied by Quebec solidaire. So they're trying to figure it out. And it feels to me that the future in Quebec politics is probably more likely around a party like the CAQ and Quebec solidaire than it would be between the Liberals and the PQ. CAQ, in some ways, fits very much the mold of the old Union Nationale that dominated Quebec politics for about 3 decades. So, all right. So now we're looking at a gap of what are we up to now? 580. So it's still staying kind of close between the two. But the CQ is only at 34.5. The PQ is at 29.6. The Quebec solidaire is at 15.1. But we are at 77% of the vote counted, so we are getting close to the end. There's only 34 boxes left to open. You're assuming some of those are going to be the advance polls, so that's when you get a big rush of votes at the end. So that'll be really key to see if this will change these numbers. But this 34% or so for the CQ, it's been holding pretty steady for the last half an hour. And for the PQ, they've been just below 30% for most of the night. So we'll see if anything's going to shift, but it's been looking pretty close. I'm not going to make a decision desk kind of call. The results in Fort White in Manitoba and in Athabasca in Saskatchewan told me not to do that. But if I was, I'd be leaning towards the CQ winning this. So Ali says I should expand to international elections. I was watching the ones in France. I do find that interesting. But for the U.S. politics, I feel like there's so many people already doing that. I don't know if more people need that. Oh yeah, Golden Gales. Alex Tyrrell could be the next John the Engineer Tyrrell. Yeah, he's a guy who's run in. I don't know what the count is up now. He must be up to nearly 100 elections that he's run in. Municipal, federal, provincial. He's never won, and he's managed to not lose them all because one of them was canceled. So, but Tyrrell's going to have to stick around for a lot longer if he's only done 8 or so by-elections. Dylan McGuire, will the upcoming election end Anglade's leadership? And is there someone waiting in the wings to take over? I would suspect that it probably will. With these kinds of results, it'll be hard for it to hold on. Unless who knows? The campaign could go well, the CAQ could collapse for some reason, and the Liberals are able to win it. But I would imagine that she's unlikely to hold on. Whether there's someone in the wings to take over, it depends on who ends up being reelected, I suppose. As Philippe and I were talking earlier on, maybe there would be some federal Liberals who could be interested in the job. But we'll see. Because there wasn't a rush of candidates running to replace Philippe J when he stepped down. So we'll see if there will be this time, if Anglade does step down. Just a reminder, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. I would appreciate it. I do have some interesting videos coming up soon. I'm going to have one on the history of Ontario elections. I'm hoping to have that up pretty soon. And it goes over about 160 years of elections. And I'm having a friend working on it. He's pretty talented with it. And it's looking pretty cool, so I can't wait to share it. Mathieu, Quebec politics would be so much more interesting with proportional representation. I believe, I'm being sarcastic, they did. The CQ did promise to change the electoral system after the last election. It was one of their campaign promises, and they decided, not the time, pandemic, and this system's working pretty good for us. So that seems to be off the table, at least for the time being. So the gap, last time I checked, it was 580. It's now at 603. 603 votes between Shirley, Dorismond, and Pierre Nantel. So that gap's not getting any smaller. And that's bad news for Pierre Nantel. There's only now 30 polling boxes still to open. And he needs to win a lot of those extra votes if he's going to pull this off. But it does look like the CQ might be able to win the seat, which would be the first time that the CQ would hold the seat. It would be the first time that the PQ would lose this seat since a by-election in 1984. Looking at your questions here. Edwin asks, how well do I think the Conservatives could do this fall? To me, that's the big question. So there's been some polls. Just looking at the latest polls, the Léger one, I like the Léger polls. They're consistent and they have a good track record. Had the Conservatives at 14%, but we did see a poll by Main Street and the Angus Reid Institute had them 24%. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to hold that. I think right now there is a lot of anger, lack of, I don't know, I'm having trouble finding my words now. People are fed up with the pandemic, easy as that. And so the Conservatives have a bit of an issue. Will they still have that issue in September, October? I don't know. Maybe, but we'll see. If they are able to maintain this and they can get up to 20% support, they're going to be a big factor. They could finish second. They might not finish second in seats because the Liberals would be able to win a lot of seats on the West Island. And the Conservatives are contesting seats with the CEQ where the CEQ is strongest, so it's hard for them to win seats. But they'll definitely be a factor, and it could have some indirect implications, right? Because if the Conservatives are starting to eat away the CEQ vote, then François Legault is going to have to do something to keep that vote. So instead of trying to be more of a centrist, get everybody on board with consensus issues among Francophone Quebecers, as they've done pretty successfully, it would be instead, I might need to tack a little bit more to the right to fend off the Conservatives, and maybe that opens up opportunities for the other parties. But I'm curious to see if the Conservatives can be a factor, because I know if you're not from Quebec, you hear the Conservative Party, you think, well, that's just normal. There's always a Conservative Party. But the Conservatives in Quebec have not ever been an issue since the 1930s. The Quebec Conservative Party in the last couple of elections gets 1%, 2%. They're really a minor party. So the fact that they are contesting second place in polls with established parties is a huge deal. So we'll see. And I'm curious to see what impact they'll have on the Conservative leadership race, because Éric Duhaime, he's kind of like a shock jock. He has some history in politics, federal politics as well. But he's had some pretty strong positions against restrictions and things like that. So he's much more conservative than the mainstream Conservative Party, at least in Quebec, would be, Quebec MPs. So will someone like Pierre Poilievre want to cozy up to him? Someone like Jean Charest certainly wouldn't. So just to review, we're now at 81% counted. The majority between, or the advance, or the lead between Dorismond and Nantel has now grown to 638 votes. Starting to look worse for Pierre Nantel and Parti québécois, starting to look pretty good for the CEQ. And that would be a big boost for them just a few months before an election call. Well, thanks very much for subscribing, Marc-Olivier. Appreciate that. Jacob Hogan, Pierre Nantel's career in politics basically over if you can't win? Yeah, probably. I mean, he was elected as a New Democrat. He left the party. He ran as a Green Party candidate, didn't do very well there. Now he might lose as a Parti québécois candidate, and we'll see. Maybe he might run again. I'm not sure if he's said one way or the other, but maybe he'll run again for the PQ in the fall, and maybe the context will be better and they could win the seat back. Who knows? Jordan Chan says the Quebec's election website is nice. It is nice. I agree. They've changed it, though, recently. It used to not be that great. It used to be pretty simple. A lot of the elections websites, some of them have gotten much better. Some of them are still really awful. I agree. The Alberta one's pretty bad. The Elections Canada one is awful. I don't know why they haven't fixed that up. Sorry if anybody's watching this is from Elections Canada. Work on your website. It's not 2008 anymore. Yes, Stéphane Simard, yes, the Union Nationale was the Conservative Party, but like when I'm talking about the actual Conservative Party, the Union Nationale was the union of the Action Libérale Nationale and the Conservative Party in the 1930s. But there was in the 70s and 80s, at least in the 80s, a PC party that ran for the Conservatives in Quebec, or that ran in Quebec provincially. Didn't do very well. Patrick Quinn, oui, j'étais né en Gaspésie, oui. Donc oui, moi aussi je suis québécois, mais j'habite maintenant à Ottawa et ça fait longtemps. Mais, ouais. Still going through these questions. Sorry if I'm following these. Ah, Mathieu, un autre Gaspésien. Bonjour. Bonsoir. Oh, the TVA has called it for the CAQ. Well, I wonder what Philippe is, if he's going to call it at some point. But I think it does look pretty safe that it is going to be CQ. I'm not sure if I would call it just yet because I don't have the information. Because again, the gap right now is 634 votes, so that's been getting bigger. Mathieu, yes, my family's also from Chandler. Maybe you know some Greniers in Chandler. Hey, beaucoup de Gaspésiens ce soir. Matane, yeah, I like Matane. Anyway, la presse has now called it. All right, well, everybody's going to call it. I'm going to say that I do believe the CQ is going to win this seat. It does look that way. 637 votes for Shirley Dorismond, and Pierre Nantel is behind. So it does seem likely that the CQ is going to win this seat, which is a big upset. Maybe not in the context of current political environment in Quebec, where the CQ is doing well and the PQ is not, but historically this has been such a PQ stronghold. This was in part one of, when you talk about the different segments of the ridings, Marie-Victorin used to be part of René Lévesque's riding, and they're losing this seat for the first time in an election since 1984 when they lost it in a by-election, the only other time the PQ lost the seat. So the CQ winning this from the PQ is a big upset, and it's the perfect kind of seat for the CQ. They want to win these suburban seats around Montreal, and this would have been high on their list of target seats. So for them, this is a big win for them, and they didn't even need it. They have a majority government, but it's a signal to the other parties that they are able to win seats. And I did hear that François Legault, he wanted to take the pressure off himself, and he said this is a test for the PQ. If we at least get more of the vote than we did last time, then it means we're growing. And it looks like they're going to do that. They're at, right now, 34.4% of the vote. That's up 6 points from the last election, so that's pretty good. They're still at fewer raw votes because they had over 8,200 votes in the last election. They're now at 4,400, but it is a by-election. And the turnout has been not too bad. Sorry, my cat might be meowing now. Turnout is now at 37%, 36.5. Not, I mean, it's not great, obviously, but for by-election, it's not so bad. Philippe called it. All right, well. 3-alarm fire for the PQ? Yes, I would say so. I mean, things have been going terribly for the Parti québécois, so this just continues that. You can imagine what would have happened if Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon had run here. He doesn't have a seat in the National Assembly. If he had run here and lost, it would have been more embarrassing than losing, even if they have a decent candidate in Pierre Nantel. But for the PQ, I mean, they've been having a rough few years, to say the least. And this is not the last kind of news that they need going into an election campaign, because after this, they're going to be reduced to a seat in Joliette and then seats in the Saguenay, in Côte-Nord, and the Gaspésie. Sorry, I just poked my cat by mistake. There's some people wondering if it's Nantel or Plamondon. I mean, Nantel, you would think that if you're thinking about it in terms of like sports statistics, right? Just whether someone's above replacement, I guess. If you would have had a generic PQ candidate, I imagine he would have done worse. He or she would have done worse than how well Pierre Nantel did, because at least he's a known figure. But I think the PQ was hoping that he would be a boost. I mean, with Pierre Nantel, the PQ had a couple things. They had someone who could win the riding because he had some profile, but also someone who suggested that the PQ wasn't a dying breed, that they could excite someone to at least run for the party. So in that way, his candidacy had some pluses, but clearly it didn't work because they're right now still about 5 points behind, and the gap has now grown to 690 votes. So We were talking at a gap of around 500 for a while, so there's only 21 more ballot boxes to count. So this is looking like curtains for the PQ. They're going to be under 30%, which is not going to be a good result for them. Oh, Radio-Canada has now projected. All right. Well, that means that the CBC would have also projected this, I assume. PSPP, it's the leader of the Parti québécois' name is Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon. It's a lot of words, so its name has been shortened often to PSPP. Like Pierre Pellado, his name is often reduced to PKP. I'm trying to translate in my head. It wasn't exactly René Lévesque's seat. It was partially his seat. The boundaries went over another one. He had a different riding, but part of the riding that he represented was included in the modern Marie-Victorin. But of course, that's 50 years ago. But yeah. So let's do a table. So I think that we're safe. Everybody's called it. La Presse has called it. And who else has called it? You guys said TVA called it. So I think that's it. That we can safely call that CQ is projected to win the seat. The writ decision desk is now proclaiming, after seeing all of the information, that the CQ will win this seat. There's currently 20 votes, 20 poll boxes still to count. We'll see how long this takes. I might stick around for a little while, maybe until 10, if the vote is not completed then. Right now we're looking at a turnout of about 36%, which is not bad for by-elections. I watch a lot of these things. Sometimes turnout's 20%, 24%. 36 isn't bad, particularly when you remember that everybody in Marie-Victorin is going to be asked to vote again in less than 6 months. And they also just voted in a municipal election, which is why this by-election happened. Catherine Fournier, she was elected the mayor of Longueuil, and so she resigned her seat. That was in November. There was a federal election in September, so people in Marie-Victorin have been voting a lot. And still 36% decided to vote in this by-election, even though this person is going to sit in the National Assembly for about a month or two. So, CBC, how it generally works at CBC is that there's a single decision desk. So the RADCAN folks, Radio-Canada, if they called it, that means CBC would call it, and vice versa. Sorry about that. Because Philippe wasn't here, my Zoom was only was not having any interactions for 40 minutes. So, all right, you got me back? Everybody's good? Okay. So, let's do a rundown of where everybody stands, and maybe we'll do this one last time and take some last questions, something like that, and then we'll close for the night. So, Shirley Dorismond, she's a nurse. She's been involved with the Nursing Association in Quebec. At one point, she was actually a bit of a critic of the government's handling of the pandemic. But she ran for the CQ, and she was successful. She now has, at the moment, just under 35% of the vote. This is a big win for the CQ. The best that they've ever done here in this riding was 28%. They're now at 35%. That's a decent gain. That's 7 points in a uniform swing. And that would put them over 40% province-wide. So this is a good result for the CAQ. They should be happy about this. Gives them a nice story going into the rest of the spring. And gives them confidence for the election in October. Not that they really needed it, they're leading in the polls. So big night for the CQ and a good result for them. For the Parti québécois, this is right now, they're at 29.6%. Not good. Not good for the PQ. The worst they've ever done was 30.8%. That was last time. So now they're under 30%. This is a riding, as I've said a couple times, they've held for decades. Pierre Nantel was a well-known candidate. This is just going to make the PQ have to answer questions about why things are not going in the right direction. And so this is really not what this party needed, because this party was already floundering, and this is only going to make matters worse. Because tomorrow the question that Paul St. Pierre Plamondon is going to have to answer is, why isn't it working? Why isn't it still not working? Why couldn't you win this seat? So for the PQ, bad night, even if they finish second here. For Quebec solidaire and Shophika Vaithyanathasarma, a decent result, I have to say. Philippe wasn't too impressed with them, but Quebec solidaire's best result here was the last campaign. They got 21.7%. They're now at 14.7%. Obviously, they've dropped, so that's a drop of about 7 points. That's not great for Quebec solidaire, but they weren't really a player in this by-election. No one thought they were going to win. And the fact that they could still get a decent share of the vote is, to me, a decent sign for Quebec solidaire. Because I think for a lot of people voting in this riding, if there was someone who would have voted for either the PQ or Quebec solidaire, PQ held the seat, they had a better-known candidate. So the fact that Quebec solidaire could still get nearly 15% of the vote, I think is for them positive sign that in the next election campaign, they have the opportunity to supplant the Parti québécois as the sovereignist, left-of-center option, and potentially, depending on how things go, make a run for official opposition if things go very badly for the Liberals. So not a bad result for Quebec solidaire. Should note that this was their best riding in the region, off the island of Montreal. So it's not terrific that they weren't a bit more competitive, but if I had to give the CQ, they get maybe an A- because they didn't win this in a walk, but they did pretty good. For the PQ, this has to be an F. They needed to win. And for Quebec solidaire, I'll give it a B-. Not bad. So if we're looking at the Conservatives, 10.6% of the vote. They didn't have a candidate here last time, so we can't compare about how well they did. I think that's a good result for them. The fact that they got in double digits, I think, is going to be a moral victory. Some of the polls have been putting them into the mid-teens, the high teens. Main Street even had them over 20%. So for the Conservatives, the Quebec Conservatives, to come out of nowhere, pretty much, to win a seat in the suburbs of Montreal was not going to happen. But for them to get over 10% of the vote and to place ahead of the Liberals is, to me, a good result for the Conservatives. Could have been a lot better. They would have finished third, even if it was because Quebec solidaire did worse, not because they did better, but just that positioning of being third would have been a better win for them. So not bad. I'll give them a C+. Moving to the Liberals. Émilie Nollet has 6.95% of the vote. That's the worst that the Liberals have ever done in this riding since it was created in 1981. The worst before this was 13% in 2016. They once won this. They won this in 1984. Just an awful result for them. Under 7%, single digits, not even close to beating the Conservatives. The Liberals have a big problem with Francophones in Quebec, and this was a riding that was predominantly Francophone. They were not competitive here. This is not a good result for them. I won't give them an F because they didn't have to win this in the same way that PQ did, but it's like a D or a D-. I'm not sure how it works anymore with grades. I don't think they give people grades anymore. And just to finish this quickly, Martine Ouellet gets under 2% of the vote. I mean, a lot of people would wonder why you're still involved in things. So she started a party that's a sovereignist party focused on the environment. It sounds a lot like Quebec solidaire, the Parti québécois. And this was a region where she had a seat before. She didn't have this seat, but she had a neighboring seat. She manages 2% of the vote. Why? The Greens, under 1%. The Greens have been seeming to have some trouble in Quebec. Tyrrell has been pretty controversial in some of the things he said. He doesn't seem to get along with his own party very well and with the federal party. Not really sure what's happening with them. And then for the rest of the list, nothing really worth mentioning. Still, I find it funny that the Union Nationale is back and got 16 votes, at least so far. We're only at 11 boxes still to count, so we are very close to the end. Excuse me. So, I think that'll be it. I think we're going to call it. The CQ right now is at 35%. That's a nice round number for them to be over 35 if they can finish there. And the PQ to be just under 30, that's just disaster for them. So if anybody has any final questions, I could try to answer them. But aside from that, I think I'm going to call it tonight. If you haven't already, please check out the website, thewrit.ca. Every week I come out with the weekly writ, which is my roundup of all of the political news, election focused, all the latest polls. I also do a historical deep dive on some past elections. So really hope that you can check out the writ.ca. I also have the podcast that comes out every Friday. We're going to be looking at federal politics later this week. And I also have some other analyses that come out now and then. And during the Ontario election, I'm planning to have more. Probably have a bonus podcast for subscribers to go over the polls during the election campaign. And I'll have more frequent analyses as well on the website. And if you haven't already as well, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. I am putting more stuff on it. The podcasts go up every Friday, so you can watch the interviews. And, I think sometimes you can see the interactions a bit more fun. And I do these live streams. I'll probably do a live stream at the very least when the Ontario election is kicked off to go over set the stage, get some questions. And I do have some more videos that I'm starting to produce. I had an introduction to the Conservative leadership race, the rules, what you need to know about it. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to have one on the Ontario election, the history of Ontario elections. And it's a really fun video, and it's going to be coming up hopefully soon in the next week or so. And so please subscribe to this YouTube channel. So I think this will be it for it. I've got some thanks. Thanks Kyle, Stephen, and Stefan, Ali. There was more of you. I don't know if you're still there, but thanks for tuning in. Thanks again to Philippe J. Fournier for joining me earlier on, so I wasn't talking to myself for too long. Check out his website at 338canada.com. And he said he's going on TV at around 10. So go check out Nouveau at 10 and CTV Montreal at 11. So that'll be it. Thanks very much. Big night for the CQ, and we're going to have an even more fun in October with the general election in Quebec. Good night, everybody.